I was reading about the history of New York's skyscrapers when I found a detail I had to read twice. There's a 70-story tower on Wall Street that went from an empty patch of ground to the tallest building on the planet in just 12 months. Its steel skeleton alone went up in 93 days, while a secret war raged between two men who used to be business partners, and while the stock market collapsed in the street below. So I took all of my research and used AI to rebuild the entire year in color. This is how they built 40 Wall Street. The clock started from April 1929. A Wall Street financier named George Orstrom announced his plan, and by May, the demolition crews were tearing into the block. Old buildings came down, the pit went in, and the foundations were laid in roughly 3 weeks. 3 weeks in the middle of the most crowded financial district on Earth. And they were doing it on a cramped, awkward L-shaped plot, squeezed between 4 streets, measuring only about 150 feet along Wall Street itself. There was no room to spread out. The only direction left was straight up. Why the insane rush? Because this was not really a building, it was a weapon. The architect was H. Craig Severance. For 13 years, he had been partners with another architect named William Van Alen, until their firm blew apart in 1924 and the two men became bitter rivals. And now, 4 miles uptown, Van Alen was building the Chrysler Building. Both towers were chasing the exact same prize, the title of tallest building in the world. The press ate it up. They called it the race into the sky. And there is one detail almost nobody knows about this site. Look at the ground they were digging. The anchor tenant was the Manhattan Company, a bank founded back in 1799 at this very address by Aaron Burr, the man who would shoot Alexander Hamilton dead in a duel 5 years later. He had set it up posing as a water company, purely to sneak past Hamilton's banking monopoly. So this tower rose on a plot of land that had already been the scene of America's most famous rivalry. Now it was hosting another one, and the steel was about to fly. This is the part that stops you cold. Look at this reconstruction and watch the frame climb, because the builders, Starrett Brothers and Eken, put up the entire steel skeleton of this 70-story tower in 93 days. That is roughly a floor every day and a half. Riveting gangs swarmed the frame in the summer heat, working in teams of 4, heating each rivet until it glowed, tossing it through the air, catching it in a metal cone, and hammering it home hundreds of feet above the traffic with no harnesses and no safety nets. Thousands of men worked this site, many of them immigrants, and the schedule was run like a factory line. Steel arrived from the mills and was bolted into place within days. As the frame climbed, it stepped inward in sharp setbacks, obeying the zoning law that forced New York towers to pull back from the street so daylight could still reach the pavement. That is what gives 40 Wall Street its tapering wedding cake silhouette. Below the steel, over 1 million square feet of floor space took shape, eventually served by 36 elevators. But while the steel went up, Severance kept moving the goalposts. The tower had been announced at 840 feet and 68 stories, which was carefully calculated to beat the Chrysler Building by a whisker. Then, word came that Van Alen had gone higher. So Severance pushed his design up again, and again, all the way to 927 feet. He had done it. On paper, his tower would be the tallest thing ever built by human hands, taller than the Woolworth Building, taller than the Eiffel Tower, taller than anything uptown. But Severance was a nervous man. He knew his old partner too well. So he quietly filed for a permit to add a decorative lantern and a 50-foot flagpole to the roof, just in case he needed a few more feet in a hurry. His instincts were right. He just had no idea how right. October 1929 delivered 2 shocks in 8 days that no one on this construction site saw coming. The first came on October 23rd. 4 miles away at the Chrysler Building, a crew hoisted something up through the roof that had been assembled in total secrecy, in pieces, hidden inside the building's own fire shaft. It was a 125-foot steel spire. In about 90 minutes, it was riveted into place, and the Chrysler Building shot up to 1,046 feet. Van Alen had not just beaten his old partner, he had ambushed him. There was no lantern, no flagpole, nothing Severance could bolt on fast enough to close a gap of more than 100 feet. Then came the second shock. The following day, panic swept the stock exchange, and on October 29th, Black Tuesday, the market collapsed completely. Fortunes evaporated in hours on the very street where this tower was being built. Think about that. The workers riveting steel at the top of 40 Wall Street were looking down on the exact block where the Roaring Twenties died. And still, incredibly, the work did not stop. On November 13th, 1929, barely 6 months after the first shovel, 40 Wall Street topped out at 927 feet. Look at the top of it in this reconstruction. While the Chrysler was going full Art Deco with steel eagles and a sunburst crown, Severance went the opposite way and reached backwards into history, crowning his tower with a steep green pyramid and a slender spire in a style the architects called modernized French Gothic. Below it, the shaft was clad in brick and cast stone, patterned to make the whole thing look like it was pulling your eye upward. Even the crown was propaganda. It was designed to look tall. And here's the strange twist. Officially, they had won. Because the Chrysler building, spire and all, was still an unfinished construction site. It would not open for months. So on the day 40 Wall Street reached its full height, it became the tallest completed building in the world, taking the crown from the Woolworth building, which had held it for 16 years. For a few short months, the men on this site were standing on top of the world. The signs, the press, the postcards, all of it said so. They just did not know how briefly they would get to keep it. While the outside had gone up at record speed, the inside took months longer. Crews spent the winter fitting out banking halls, offices, and lobbies, wiring and plumbing a vertical city for thousands of workers. The building was finished on May 1st, 1930, and opened its doors on May 26th, 1 year after the demolition crews first arrived. The Chrysler building officially opened the very next day. One day. That is how long 40 Wall Street's reign lasted before Van Alen's spire made it official and the crown went uptown. Severance's team refused to accept it. His consulting architects went to the newspapers and argued that 40 Wall Street was the real winner because the Chrysler spire was pure decoration that nobody could stand on, while their own observation deck sat nearly 100 feet above the Chrysler's highest usable floor. It was a good argument. It was also completely pointless, because those same consulting architects, Shreve and Lamb, had already taken on another job uptown. Their firm was designing the Empire State Building, and when it opened 11 months later at 1,250 feet, it crushed both towers so completely that the argument simply stopped mattering. Even the contractors, Starrett Brothers and Alen, went straight from this site to building it. The race was over. And so, for a while, was the party. 40 Wall Street opened into a broken world. The crash had wiped out the tenants who were supposed to fill it, and the crown jewel of the financial district spent years struggling to find them. Then, on the evening of May 20th, 1946, an Army transport plane, lost in thick fog, slammed straight into the 58th floor, tearing a hole in the masonry and killing everyone on board. Astonishingly, not one person inside the building was hurt. The tower barely flinched. It has been battered, sold, nearly forgotten, and eventually bought in 1995 by Donald Trump, who renamed it the Trump Building. But look at it again in this reconstruction, and remember what you are actually seeing. 70 floors, 93 days of steel, 1 year from empty ground to the tallest building on Earth, built by men racing a ghost of a friendship while the economy died beneath their feet. They lost the crown by a single day. But they built something that is still standing almost a century later.